Have you ever opened your eyes in the morning and felt a heaviness that goes beyond physical exhaustion, deeper than ordinary tiredness, something subtle and persistent, quietly lingering in your chest, as if your heart was already bracing itself for another day of pretending to fit into a world you no longer recognize? It's not exactly sadness, nor a clearly defined pain you could easily explain, but rather a gentle yet persistent sense of displacement, as if you somehow woke up in a life you never consciously chose, quietly moving through routines that lost their meaning a long time ago. You're not sure when exactly it began, or what triggered this feeling, but it grew slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, until one day, you found yourself silently asking, in between fake smiles and empty conversations, "What's wrong with me?" You tried naming it depression, anxiety, or burnout, searched for symptoms, looked for solutions, compared yourself endlessly with those around you who seemed effortlessly capable of happiness, people who could laugh without forcing it, smile without hiding something, and chase dreams that never made sense to you in the first place. But what if the sadness you feel isn't a problem at all? What if it isn't proof that you're broken or weak, but rather the clearest evidence yet that something within you is still alive, still deeply human, still resisting the numbness the world calls normal? Because here's the uncomfortable truth nobody taught you how to recognize. What if the reason you feel so drained, so empty, so quietly disconnected, is not because something in you is malfunctioning, but because you're finally seeing clearly in a society that stopped asking meaningful questions long ago? You're one of the few who still sees beneath the surface, who notices the subtle sadness behind polite smiles, the quiet desperation behind carefully curated social media posts, and the hidden exhaustion lurking beneath each hurried step and rushed conversation. You don't just hear words, you sense their emptiness. You don't just see faces, you recognize the weariness behind them. You don't just witness life unfolding, you feel its silent ache. An ache that whispers, "Is this really all there is?" And yet, the world taught you that this sensitivity, this clarity, was your flaw, something to be fixed, medicated, numbed. It told you to harden yourself, to toughen up, to stop asking uncomfortable questions, to stop looking too closely at a reality everyone else prefers to ignore. And because you couldn't stop feeling, couldn't stop noticing, couldn't shut off the subtle whispers inside, you began believing there was something wrong with you, instead of something profoundly wrong with a world that fears authenticity and rewards those who silence their inner voice. Carl Jung once spoke of people born with a heightened sensitivity, a kind of inner antenna that picks up what others miss or choose not to notice. People who see clearly through illusions that others comfortably accept as reality. And maybe that's why you feel so deeply exhausted, not because you're weak, but because clarity, in a society built on illusion and distraction, always feels painfully isolating at first. Your tiredness isn't laziness, it's the profound fatigue of constantly sensing the gap between the life you're expected to live and the deeper truths you carry quietly inside. What you're feeling isn't sickness, it's awareness. It's not a breakdown. It's the quiet but relentless awakening to the fact that much of what the world celebrates is hollow, that what society calls success often leaves you empty, and that chasing validation from people who barely know themselves is a recipe for loneliness. You're not losing yourself. You're just finally recognizing the ways you abandoned yourself, little by little, in the pursuit of belonging somewhere that never truly felt like home. This pain, this quiet ache, isn't the sign of your failure. It's the first honest sign of your return. A slow, gentle turning back to the parts of you that never agreed to disappear, never agreed to perform, never agreed to call emptiness meaningful or numbness strength. And although it hurts now, this isn't the place you fall apart. This is the moment you start reclaiming your aliveness, your depth, your honesty, your tenderness, all the things the world once taught you were weaknesses, but are in fact your greatest strengths. Because maybe the deepest truth is this: you were never broken, you were never defective, you were never lost. You simply lived too long believing that something within you needed fixing, instead of seeing clearly that what was hurting you was never inside, but all around you, in a world that forgot what it means to truly feel, to truly live, to truly be human. So breathe and know that this pain isn't the problem. It's your reminder. You don't need to change who you are to fit into a world that's forgotten how to feel. There's a certain kind of suffering nobody really prepares you for. Not the obvious pain of heartbreak, not the raw ache of loss, not even the sharp sting of failure, but rather the quiet, almost invisible grief that arrives when you finally start to see clearly, when you begin to realize that much of what you believed about life, happiness, and success was never actually true, but instead a carefully constructed illusion meant to keep you quietly compliant, comfortably distracted, and gently asleep. It doesn't hit you suddenly, not in some dramatic epiphany or loud breakdown, but emerges slowly, softly, almost imperceptibly at first, like a morning fog gradually lifting from a landscape you've lived in your entire life, revealing contours you've never noticed before. Contours that whisper to you, gently but firmly, "This isn't real. This isn't yours. This was never meant to feed the deeper part of who you truly are." And suddenly, you can't stop seeing it. This silent truth hidden beneath everyday conversations, tucked behind polite smiles, concealed within busy routines and hurried interactions. You walk into rooms and immediately sense the invisible weight of everything people carefully avoid saying. You hear laughter, but can feel the hollowness behind it, as if everyone's agreed to pretend there's depth where there's only emptiness. You watch others chase goals, promotions, status, and wonder quietly to yourself why no one ever pauses long enough to ask, "What am I really doing here? Why do I want this? Why does it all still feel empty, even after I've achieved what I was told would make me happy?" And the more you see, the harder it becomes to look away, to return to that comforting state of numbness that once allowed you to blend effortlessly into the crowd. Because clarity, when it arrives, is relentless. It refuses to be unseen, refuses to let you retreat back into illusions that once felt safe. I once knew a man, someone you'd pass every day without ever noticing he was quietly unraveling, a gentle, reliable man who seemed to have everything perfectly in place. He had a stable job, a comfortable home, and a family he genuinely loved. Each morning, he'd leave for work with his coffee in one hand, freshly ironed shirt crisp against his shoulders, and every evening he'd return, ask about his children's day, kiss his wife hello, and settle into the predictable comfort of the evening news. But one day, in a moment of rare honesty, he quietly confessed to me, not with tears, not with anger, just a whisper tinged with profound bewilderment. "I don't feel anything anymore. Not sadness, not despair, just nothing." It wasn't clinical depression or exhaustion. It was something far subtler, far deeper, a quiet realization that he had unknowingly traded something deeply real within himself for the comfort and safety of a life that others called successful, respectable, and responsible. And now, standing in the middle of that carefully built existence, he couldn't remember why he'd constructed it this way in the first place, or why it felt so hollow despite looking so full. That's the silent, aching cost of clarity. Not a loud collapse, but a quiet emptiness, a gentle mourning for the parts of you that you abandoned along the way. You grieve the laughter you faked, the tears you held back, the dreams you carefully tucked away for later, and the questions you stopped asking because nobody around you seemed willing or able to hear them. And even though you're finally seeing clearly, even though you're finally standing in your own truth, the price of that truth is feeling strangely alone, as if you're the only one who woke up in a crowded room where everyone else remains asleep, effortlessly pretending they're still at the party you can no longer join. But here's what no one ever says clearly enough. This pain, this subtle grief, isn't permanent. It's essential. It's the quiet fire before freedom, the necessary darkness before your return to light, the gentle but powerful price of reclaiming your truth in a world built upon forgetting. You aren't losing yourself. You're shedding what was never yours. You aren't broken. You're becoming whole again. And yes, clarity can ache deeply, but someday, not so far from now, you'll look back and understand with a quiet gratitude that this very ache was never your destruction, but your liberation. You'll realize softly yet undeniably that this moment of clarity, as uncomfortable as it feels right now, wasn't the end of you. It was the beginning of something infinitely more real. There's a certain kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with physical isolation, the kind you feel not when you're sitting alone in a quiet room, but when you're surrounded by people who move effortlessly through life, seemingly unbothered by the same things that quietly haunt you late at night. People who speak your language yet feel worlds apart, whose laughter rings easily, while you find yourself silently questioning what everyone else so comfortably accepts as true. It's a loneliness rooted not in distance, but in depth. The quiet ache of feeling everything too profoundly, of seeing through surfaces to the subtle truths hidden beneath polite smiles and casual conversations. You sit among friends or colleagues, listening as they discuss weekend plans, office gossip, and fleeting achievements, and though you might nod or smile, your spirit quietly withdraws, craving conversations that touch something deeper, something gentler, something far more honest. You find yourself aching, not for easy answers or quick fixes, but for presence, for the rare kind of companionship that doesn't shy away from silence, that doesn't expect you to shrink your truths to fit neatly into someone else's comfort zone, that simply says through quiet eyes, "I see you, exactly as you are, right here." Yet more often than not, you encounter carefully rehearsed masks, faces expertly trained in appearing fine, voices carefully practiced in avoiding the uncomfortable, unspoken questions you carry in your chest. And so you quietly wonder if you might be alone in this awareness, if you're the only one who notices the sadness behind people's smiles, the subtle tension that fills rooms long before words are spoken, the hollowness behind the routines and rituals everyone else seems content to perform without question. You ask yourself silently, night after night, if anyone else feels this lingering ache, if anyone else recognizes the emptiness in what the world calls normal. But each time, you're met with silence, or worse, a gentle dismissal that makes you doubt the validity of your own perceptions. But here's something important that the quietness of your pain may have caused you to forget. You are not the only one. There are others, hidden in plain sight, quietly carrying the same tender ache, the same unanswered questions, the same gentle refusal to settle for less than what feels true. These people might be quiet, might not easily reveal themselves, might not always know how to put words to their feelings, but they're out there, gently observing, quietly feeling, silently waiting to meet someone who also understands the depth behind everyday life. There's a reason those who feel the most deeply often find themselves spending long stretches of time alone, not because something within them is broken or flawed, but because their hearts refuse to settle for the shallow, superficial connections the world often offers. And though this solitude might ache deeply at times, there's an undeniable beauty hidden within it too, because in solitude you learn how to listen, not only to the noise of the world, but to the quiet movements of your own inner world. You learn how to sit with your questions without rushing toward answers, how to hold your sadness without needing to explain or justify it, how to become your own gentle witness, patiently waiting for truths that reveal themselves only in stillness and silence. In this process, without even realizing it, you begin to embody the kind of person you've always secretly hoped existed, the one who can meet you exactly where you are, without judgment, without expectation, without the need for you to perform or pretend. And someday, perhaps sooner than you realize, someone else will recognize this quiet strength, this subtle softness, this rare authenticity within you. Someone whose eyes gently say, "I've been waiting for someone like you too." And in that gentle moment of recognition, you'll suddenly understand that you were never truly alone. You were simply becoming someone rare and quietly powerful, someone beautifully real, in a world that had forgotten what it means to truly connect, truly feel, and truly be seen. So before you click away, before you return to scrolling, to working, to answering messages, pause for just one moment and ask yourself something deeply honest. Not from your head, not from the place that rationalizes or explains away your feelings, but from the quiet, deeper part of you that already knows the truth. When did I begin believing that feeling deeply was something to apologize for? Who convinced me that my tenderness was a flaw rather than a gift? How many times have I made myself smaller, quieter, easier, just to become acceptable to people who were never truly capable of seeing me clearly in the first place? How much of myself have I quietly abandoned, hoping that it might make me feel just a little less alone? And now, ask yourself gently, what would happen if you simply stopped apologizing for the slow, deep way your heart moves through the world, like water, reflective and quiet, full of unseen depths? Stopped waiting for permission to live fully in your truth, exactly as you are. Stop trying to translate your most sacred self into a language everyone else finds comfortable or convenient. Imagine, just for a moment, how it would feel to stand firmly and quietly in your softness, in your silence, in your quiet knowing, and allow the world, for once, to adapt itself to you. Because the truth is, you were never placed here to fit neatly into boxes or play the roles others scripted for you. You were never here to settle for superficial acceptance or to trade away your depth for the hollow comfort of approval. You came into this life to feel fully, to remember deeply, to remind the world, through the quiet bravery of your existence, that sensitivity has never been weakness, but rather the quiet strength of those brave enough to remain human in a world that fears true vulnerability. And maybe that's the most essential truth of all, that survival in this world doesn't require hardening yourself, numbing yourself, or shrinking into a lesser version of who you really are. Maybe it simply requires remembering, gently, lovingly, and without shame, exactly who you were before the world convinced you to forget. So I ask you once more, softly but clearly, what would your life look like if you finally trusted the very parts of yourself you've been taught to hide away? What would unfold inside you if you ceased performing and allowed yourself simply to be? What beautiful, honest, powerful truths might awaken within you if, just for once, you stopped abandoning yourself? Because in the end, the world doesn't need more masks, more performances, or more empty achievements. It desperately needs people who still dare to feel deeply, who dare to speak honestly, who dare to exist fully in their tenderness, their wisdom, and their quiet power. It needs you, not the you who performs or pretends or makes yourself small, not the you carefully edited to please everyone else, but the you who is raw, gentle, real, the you who understands that true strength never needed applause or validation, just quiet courage and an unwavering heart. This right here is your moment, the quiet yet profound turning point, when you finally embrace the depth you've always carried, when you finally realize that feeling too much was never a curse, but your greatest strength, and that sensitivity, far from being your flaw, has always been your doorway back home. So breathe deeply, let yourself feel it all, and remember who you are, because the world may have forgotten how to feel, but you haven't. And now, perhaps more clearly than ever, you understand that your softness, your honesty, your quiet power is exactly what the world has been waiting for.